Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Get Ready for Recruiting in 2024. I have a few housekeeping notes before we begin. If you have any questions or technical concerns, please use the Q&A module on your screen. You can resize and minimize the different modules on your screen by using the options in the top right corner of each module. This event is being recorded and can be watched later on demand using the same link. Attendees will receive the recording of today's event. Look for that email within 24 hours post-event. We encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A module throughout the event for our speakers to address. You can also use the reaction module in the menu at the bottom to relay items you may like or want to express an emotion to. And now I will pass the stage to Rebecca Warren, Director, Customer Success, Eightfold AI.
Hey folks, so excited to see you today. Thanks for joining us. We are coming to you live. I am in Phoenix, Arizona, and I will pass it over to my partner Matt to introduce himself in just a second. So I am a Customer Success Director at Eightfold. I lead a team that helps to support our clients in all things that they need, from solving problems to developing strategies. Super excited to chat with you today about what's happening in 2024. So I'm going to shoot it on over to Matt to introduce himself, and then we'll get started.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Corrett. I'm with Hudson RPO. I'm the Director of Client Delivery here. I oversee our total talent solutions across our customer portfolios. I'm based out of Tampa, Florida. Really excited to be a part of the presentation today, and excited to share just some market insights around what we're seeing and how we're advising around recruitment readiness for the year ahead.
All right. So we want to start off. And I actually didn't forward to our slide that introduced ourselves so you can see us here. But I wanted to start off here with a poll. So you should see a poll on your screen right now asking you, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing in recruiting today? So we've given you some options. They are not exhaustive. We have some ideas on what that might be. So is it skills shortages? Is it attracting the right candidates? Is it aligning staffing with strategic objectives, managing DE&I, balancing permanent and contract staff, or could it be succession planning for key roles or something else? We didn't give you another option, but there might be another. But go ahead and choose the one that you feel most aligns with what you're seeing today in recruiting. And I think both Matt and I have maybe a perspective on what we're seeing, and we'll be able to weigh in. Any of these right now, Matt, that you think, if you had to make a guess, which one is going to pop up as the top one?
I have to imagine that skill shortages in critical areas is going to continue to be one particular area that we see a lot of across our customer canvas. So I would imagine that's something that's still top of mind for many of the folks out there.
Right, and I think that's an interesting one because it could be misalignment with hiring managers, or it could be skill shortages, right? Like, what are hiring managers actually saying they need, as opposed to what do they actually need skill-wise to do the job?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Looks like we've got quite a few folks weighing in. Let's take a look and see what we have. Oh, Matt, you get a prize. So yeah. Skill shortages in critical areas and attracting the right candidates. And I actually think the two of those really go together, right? Because what does the right candidate look like? What are you actually looking for? And then what are those skills that you need that maybe we didn't need in the past that you need today? All right. Well, thanks for that feedback. So I think the topics that we've prepared to talk about are probably pretty spot on, and maybe we'll give you some things to think about. So, well, let's take a little bit of a look back. What's been happening to get us to where we are as we think about what's going to happen in 2024? So let's take a look at how we got here. Oy vey, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last couple of years. When we were discussing what we wanted to talk about, and we said, hey, let's do a look back to 2023, and then we realized we're probably not giving enough context. We need to look back even a little further to see what's happened in the last couple of years. So I won't read this slide to you, but I wanted to see, Matt, are there any of these that you think really stick out that has made kind of a sweeping impact on what we have to look forward to in the next year?
Yeah, I think through the lens of recruitment readiness, right? And we're talking about being prepared to, go to market as individual companies to go out to hire. You can't neglect thinking about how, any bit of layoffs or changes in the market dynamics related back to interest rates, and how, inflation has impacted across the board. So there's several inputs that we know have made significant impacts around hiring plans, how companies are thinking about hiring, versus what their bottom line is, and et cetera. So those are the things that tend to stick out to me, but those are most recent. But I mean, to your point, as you zoom out, it's all, all of these have kind of dovetailed together in succession. And I think the one thing we talked about, prior to the call going live, was that in every case where we've seen, kind of a downturn in market throughout history, they've gotten shorter and shorter and the rebounds have come quicker. And so I think that, as we look through the presentation moving forward, if there's any optimism that we can tie back to some of these events that we're looking at, is that, we're, at a macro level, there will be decisions being made that help to influence turnarounds quicker. And I think the most recent, evidence of that we'll look at is what happened between the pandemic, the rebound from that, how we reacted in that moment, the results of that, and now how, what lessons learned are all companies and people taking from that, and how does that shape what hiring looks like moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the way things have happened over the last couple of years really have brought us to this point for a lot of different reasons. One of the other things that we were chatting about is that it's difficult now. It used to be pretty easy to separate work from politics, from other issues. And I don't know that we have that anymore. Right now, there's a lot of things that come together that are affecting all together. So we talked about this slide. Do we put politics on there? Do we put social justice? And I feel like we have to, because all of that has driven the changes and the things that we're seeing in the market, and what things look like going forward. So lots of different things that have brought us here. And I don't know, I'm just looking at our list here. What we even haven't put on here, we did talk about the pandemic, but is the switch up to remote work, to more technology, those kind of things that we will talk about later on in the presentation, but didn't even really make the slide because those were trickle down things that have happened because of some of the bigger impacts. So lots of things have brought us here. And I think there's a lot of great things, I think, to help us move forward. There's a lot of challenges that we have out there as well. So we look at here where 91% of 1,000 HR and C-suite leaders say that HR's role has changed dramatically over the past 5 years. And 41% of these same execs don't think that these changes are going to slow down anytime soon. I think this is spot on. There was someone who is in my network who made a post recently that just totally made me laugh, because when you think about what HR's role is, it's so different depending on the companies, and it looks so different from where it was, even 10 years ago to today. And there was a post that she had put up saying, "Why is somebody asking me as an HR leader how to decorate my door that's appropriate?" Like, who cares, right? Like, but some of the HR spaces are focused on how do I appropriately decorate my door, and some are saying how do I prepare us for the challenges coming in the next 5 years. So there's a big change in how HR is working, focused, what that attention looks like. I think we are going to continue to see changes in expectations of work, in how the work gets done, why the work gets done. I feel like we're probably asking better questions of HR than we have in the past. It feels to me like it's less of a catch-all of all of the things that somebody else doesn't want to do, right? The terminators, the decorators, the potluck planners, and it feels like HR is moving into more of that strategic space where we're going to continue to see these changes, but also making sure that HR is prepared to handle those changes. Any thoughts on that before I flip to the next slide?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the role has evolved, and HR and talent acquisition are probably working closer than they ever have before, part and parcel due to technology, the advancements of AI, all the regulatory and compliance that's, being stood up as a result of that. So all of these are important things to consider, when you think about, again, through the lens of being prepared for next year. What does that mean for me? How does that impact not only who we want to hire, but how does that impact our current, employee population as well?
Right. And a lot of those changes are coming because of the disruption that's happening, as we talked about with digital technology. What things are we looking to do? What things are we looking to not do? When we look at 23% of jobs will be disrupted in the next 5 years, 14 million fewer jobs overall, 83 million roles potentially will disappear, 69 million will emerge. I don't know that that's a bad thing, because I think we're learning how to be more effective, more focused with the work that we're doing. But I do think that especially in our space, there's going to be a lot of things that have changed. And we think about the jobs that were created just in the past 3 years because of the pandemic and some of the other things in the workplace, and some of the jobs that are just going away. I think we're going to continue to see this shift, and we have to be prepared to adjust.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's a huge emphasis being placed on productivity as it relates to, the inclusion of additional tools and technology, and, but I think a lot of companies in general are still, evaluating, which are, real and what's just noise, right? And I think there's so much out there that, they kind of have to sort through. And again, a lot of that can fall back on, HR, talent acquisition, for their branded tools and technologies that they're going to be, see or get advertised to. And then there's other parts of the business as well, whether you're in marketing, sales, or otherwise. So if there's one thing that we know for certain, is that there is an abundance of things that are being stood up from a platform perspective that make a lot of big promises, but will take some time to do the due diligence to understand if they truly add that level of productivity that is being sought after.
That's a great call out. Yeah, I think that Goldman Sachs, I'm just looking at my notes here, has said that up to 1 in 4 current work tasks could be completely automated by AI in the next 2 years. It's kind of a crazy thing to think about, but then what does that mean for us being able to do the work that we actually like to do, instead of doing some of those repetitive, tasks that maybe don't add as much value? All right, so let's take a look at what's happening today. Where are we at? What are we seeing? One of the things that we have continued to focus on here at Eightfold with our clients and hearing in the market is that it's more important than ever to make sure that all areas of the business are aligned, that you understand what your organization's top priorities are, how does HR or TA fit into those objectives, making sure that the organization is all driving towards the right end goals with the right talent, skill sets, and focuses in mind. So if we as a function are not aligned to our organizational priorities, it's going to be really hard, in my opinion, for folks to be able to be successful. What are those main things that we have to be paying attention to every day in order to get our jobs done? That's one of the number one things that we have to be focusing on, are those top priorities. Matt, are you seeing that as well with your clients, that there's been a shift to say we have to be not just focused as a department, but we have to be focused as a full-on organization?
Yeah, there's got to be alignment top to bottom, right? This is probably one of the most, again, critical times that there's alignment across department, across company, across culture and org, because at the end of the day, that, everyone at every, position within the company has to be able to execute against, what their role and duty is.
Yep.
And I think, again, I'm just pointing back to the last 2 years, there was a lot of initiative to grow for the sake of growing, to capture market share. And I think, a lot of companies have pulled back and learned that, that needs more, that approach needs a lot more diligence, from understanding what the expected outcomes are going to be as a result of those, that hiring movement. And now, I think that's probably going to serve everyone great moving forward. But in order to make best use of that, you have to have alignment, organizationally, across the entire company.
Right, exactly right. And we also have to know, with those priorities, what are those skills that we're going to need to be able to execute not just today, but in the future. So we're going to switch to another poll for you. How confident are you in your organization's ability to assess an employee's potential beyond what you see on a resume? We hear a lot about focusing on skills and becoming a skills-based organization. What's your skills taxonomy? But before we can talk about making sure that we have the right skills, we have to see, are we good at assessing what those skills are? I think a lot of folks are used to looking at a resume or a background or a profile, and maybe not as much as looking at not just the work that somebody can do, but maybe the things that you haven't even seen yet, like what's behind the curtain there. So when we talk about that confidence, how confident are you in your organization's ability, not just your own personal ability, to assess that potential? Are you uber confident, all the way down to very doubtful? Matt, where do you think we're going to land on this?
Oh man, let's see if I can go 2 for 2. I would say, again, just with most companies that I've had the pleasure of working with, I think most feel somewhat confident, right? That when it comes to the way their talent acquisition teams go about, from all the way from their sourcing strategy through that evaluation process, I think that they feel pretty confident in the ability to assess beyond just what's on a resume when they go through those processes. But I can tell you that, as we go, as we kind of peel the onion back, from a solutions perspective, when we kind of get down into the details of those motions, we tend to find, some blind spots around those areas.
Yeah, because when we're thinking about this, we're not just looking, and then we have to look further than just keywords, right? It can't be just the buzzwords. It's got to be, what does that depth look like? Okay, so I think you got it, right? That's somewhat confident, kind of right in that middle space. What I find super interesting about this is that very, very small number at that top, right? We've got 7% of the folks here feel very confident that the organization gets that skills focused ability. It's kind of interesting. But I think in order for us to be successful in the future, we've got to look beyond just the surface. And I think that's where we've landed up till now, is really looking at that bit above the surface, right? This is what we see. This is what we know. This is what we can prove. Here's where it's been, showcased on LinkedIn, or my buddy used to work with this person and they say they've done X. There's so much underneath the surface that goes into what talent looks like. So are those adjacent skills? What is their potential? What do they want to do? What are their capabilities? What does it look like in comparison to other candidates that are out there, right? Where can we find folks that maybe we haven't been looking, right? That talent rediscovery, maybe somebody who wasn't quite ready for a role a couple of years ago, but might be now, or what somebody has done maybe in their off hours, right? If they're maybe they're a coach for a team, or something that they've done that showcases different skills. we've got to look beyond just that surface in order to find the future talent that we need to take our businesses forward. So less about keywords and more about looking at a holistic view of what talent looks like. Matt, let me ask you a question here. If we think about this, I'd love to get your perspective on how you think AI and technology helps us to get past just looking at that top third of the iceberg.
Yeah, so I think, and I'll just use Eightfold as an example. As a platform, as a platform, right? One of the key things that we find is really helpful with that is because it's powered by an anonymized set of keywords found across I think a billion different profiles, is that it has the ability to make inferential connections about a profile of somebody that a recruiter on one of our teams might be looking at, that they themselves as an individual don't have the index to do, right? Mm-hmm. So we've all got a limited number, so-called, of understand of connections between one word to another and one environment to another. And I think when we think about technology from that perspective, just talking on sourcing alone, you have the ability to understand, who ranks or who might be a great fit, who's not obvious.
Right.
I think another great example is that we work with a lot of organizations today who I think really want to be able to better assess their existing employee population and where they might fit across the company. Mm-hmm. But learning and development has been a pretty static way of kind of like building up skills within an organization. I think where the gap has really been is around that assessment piece and understanding, building a career path based on that. Right. I think many of the companies that we've worked with, do a great job. We help them hire some incredible people. But career paths continue to be one area that needs the most work because, individuals are hired within the roles that they need the work done, but there's not always enough, foresight about what that level of attainment looks like beyond that. So,
absolutely.
And I think that AI is going to play a part in helping to build some of those career trajectories and opportunities and open up blind spots where, people might be able to say, hey, I have interest in working in these key areas. Where am I short?
Right. Yeah. And so when we look at some of the data that goes around skills focused organizations and where are they, looking at, to what you're saying, being able to retain those top performers, because it's not just what can I do today, but where do I want to go? What can I do in the future? And it may be jobs that don't actually even exist at the time, right? But if you're looking at the skills, you're looking at what somebody has the potential to do. It's a lot easier then for you to be able to say, oh, well, they could be a fit in this particular group, in this particular department, where that might not have crossed your radar if you were just looking at just a profile. So being able to place that talent more effectively, being able to be more innovative because we're looking at what skills somebody brings to the table as opposed to what job title or what their resume looks like. And that reputation of a great place to work, when I talk to folks about their organizations and where are they moving people and how are they thinking about succession planning, talent reviews, where do people want to go, when it also starts switching to an employee-led process where folks feel like they have a say in their career. Here are the skills I have. Here are the projects I want to be involved in. Here are the things I want to do. When the employees have the ability to focus on those things as opposed to just saying, okay, well, I'm going to put you in this box and then you move to this box, it makes a big difference in how people feel in terms of their excitement about coming to work every day and also what that future might look like. It doesn't feel so scary when you say, hey, I've got a defined set of skills that I know are going to get me potentially to that next level, and my employer is paying attention to that.
Yeah, I think anytime that a company can demonstrate that and point to it within the organization that somebody has been able either to move, from one area of the business to another, due to a skills, increase on their own, right? I think that's going to really, because I think a lot of companies, proudly go out and say, hey, we have the ability for people to move into different roles, but actually seeing it, not just, telling me, but showing me. I think that means everything to an individual and earns a lot of credibility across the employee population.
Right. Yeah, and so I have an example that I've put up here of candidate personas that I've used in the past in a restaurant organization. And what is interesting about looking at personas instead of just a resume or a profile is it gives you an opportunity to see what other skills somebody might have that might fit. So if you don't have an AI platform or a tool to help you do this, you can still do the skills-based hiring more of a manual way. If you put together these personas to help you understand in different parts of somebody's career what those skills or that potential that they bring to the table, you're going to then be able to mix up what your hiring looks like. And it also helps you with your hiring managers bring some additional information to them. Like, here's why a diverse slate is better. If we only hire Terry's on the right, the most experienced folks, your groups are going to look probably pretty similar, especially if you're starting to look for similar backgrounds, similar companies that folks have come from, similar lengths of experience. But when you look at the skills of what maybe a Jordan can bring to the table, doesn't have a lot of restaurant background, but has been involved in maybe some of those leadership experiences and has that drive and that potential, what is that going to do to bring into your organization? Different skills, different focuses, and also then allow you to build out an organization that has more diversity of background, thoughts, and allows you to fill in those gaps inside of your organization instead of having to try to figure out, okay, now I've got these great big gaps, and how do I fill that? Or you don't have an ability to move somebody into the next role because everybody looks the same and are at the same level of their career. Matt, have you had anyone that you've worked with use that personas and think about doing it the manual way, but able to shift what that organization looks like by getting different profiles in the mix?
Yeah, so I think this is an area we coach on quite a bit, right? So whether they have an actual like platform in place to help with this, but we spend a lot of time talking about this subject in particular when we talk about any need within a customer organization. And as we dive into those, requirements, right? We talk about the work shift and allocation. It says, well, you could be aimed at an 8-year person today who has completed X, Y, and Z. But what if you have a really strong 6-year person who is an 85% match? Could we shift some of that workload around the team, right? To be able to bring in somebody who, again, is that 85% match, is in budget, rather than having to go over budget and potentially, upset the apple cart by having to pay more, right, across a team that's already at a specific level of comp.
Yeah.
So, those are all things we take into consideration as we kind of coach through comp, role, task, everything that's associated within that. And I think this is a great example of, especially when working directly with those hiring teams or lines of business, to say, this is a great visual to understand, what can you get from somebody based on what their background and persona is. And this also allows them to highlight what training areas, would you want to segment, based on the persona that you hire.
Yeah.
And I think that opens the door to that shift that we're talking about in terms of, more skills-based hiring, and recognition of opportunities for growth.
Yeah. So I think that leads us right into this talent wheel that we talked about. We started off talking about organizational plans and aligning people with business strategies. What we talk about when you look at skills as opposed to a job description, when you look at what somebody brings to the table, instead of trying to cookie cutter folks into a business strategy, now you're aligning people with what the work looks like. What individual things do they bring to the table that helps you get those business priorities accomplished? So we look at this talent wheel. You could actually come in anywhere on this wheel to help get this process moving when you're looking at a skills-based organization. It may be coming in with organizational plans and then saying, okay, now we're going to benchmark, analyze, develop, and engage. It could be, hey, we're really going to focus on engaging talent, understand where they're at, what they want to do, and then move into that wheel. It doesn't actually even have to go in that particular order. It can maybe be a little bit less circular. But when we look at aligning skills and aligning people with business strategies, there are some steps that you have to take in order to get people aligned to that. And so I think moving to a skills-based strategy not only helps you in terms of being prepared for the future, but it also allows you to have a lot of data around what does somebody bring to the table, what do you need, how are you going to develop that and drive that forward, instead of trying to look at just a resume or an X number of years of experience or X number of companies that they've worked at.
Yeah, I would just add I would just add, I think these are key critical activities from an HR and talent perspective to, every year taking inventory against those areas, right? What are the org plans? How are we going about and engaging talent both internally and externally from a talent acquisition perspective? What is our, talent development strategy across our people? How do we go about analyzing the skills of our people in our organization today? Is that done only when we conduct, annual reviews? Is that the only opportunity we take to kind of evaluate where we are from a skills-based perspective? And then competitive benchmarking, how are we doing that? Are we doing that against our peer group? Are we doing that against, market to market? So I think those are absolutely critical to conduct.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so now let's talk about what talent intelligence, not just AI or machine learning or automation, let's talk about talent intelligence as a category. What has that done to get us to this point, and how are we going to potentially use talent intelligence to take us forward? So I have another poll for us. Yay! I would love to hear how you all feel about AI's role in talent acquisition, and maybe even a broader, just in talent in general. So talent acquisition, talent management. How do you feel about AI's role in TA and HR? Are you excited? Do you feel it's going to be a game changer? Feeling sort of optimistic, think that there are some benefits, neutral, like, hey, we'll see where it can come in the most, in the least intrusive way, skeptical, not sure, and concerned, pretty sure the world's going to turn into Skynet in the next couple of years. So where are you along that list? Matt, I'm going to throw it to you and see if we get your predictive skills 3 times now.
So, again, I've been on a few panels and talking with customers and QBRs. I think there's an optimistic sentiment about its benefits. I think, again, that most of the organizations I speak to holistically are looking at it from a task-oriented perspective today.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And that a lot of the gains or expectations upon AI are to, push productivity, push efficiency gains, which net out, right, in some cases, into fewer hands performing more work. But there are third order effects, right, tied back to those things that maybe aren't dead in front of focus. But I think that's kind of where people are at today, especially since you think about OpenAI was announced, brought to public in February. People started interacting with the platform, and I think we've never had this much adoption of a piece of technology openly since the Googles and Yahoos of the world. So this is
so
incredibly
quickly
fast
too, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, exactly. So fast on how that happened. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay, Matt, you were just spot on. You have your finger on the pulse of our group today, so well done. Yeah, I do think, and that's where I talk about it too. I do think that optimism is the right place to be at. I think AI, machine learning, those things are a game changer, but we also have to make sure that they're being looked at in the right way, using AI for good, allowing us to do the things we love to do, taking the stuff off of our plate that maybe isn't as productive or isn't as exciting. Where can we automate? Where can we use AI to make our jobs better? We're never going to get rid of the human element, of the human element. It's just not a thing. And so we talk about inside of Eightfold, and Ashu is our CEO, that AI empowers machines and humans each to do what they do best. So together, it allows humans to perform a task faster and better, and it also teaches the AI to become smarter. So together, it's faster and better than doing it just individually. I really think that even just as a thought starter, right? I'll give an example of a chat GPT. Yes, I have written a silly poem to my husband about cats and golf clubs and music, and he was less impressed than I was, but we've used it for those silly things. But I've also used it to help me create things. For instance, I was really stuck and we were creating an internal charter for our customer success team, and I was super stuck. I just couldn't come up with what that summary should look like. So I threw a whole bunch of stuff into the chat GPT string, and it spit out something that at least got my mind started. I didn't copy it directly, but it got me starting to think about different ways maybe to put ideas together, which we've always done, right? We've spent a lot of time going out and doing Google searches. My philosophy is also don't recreate the wheel. So who else has put a job description or a job ad out there that's better than what I can do to get that thought started, right? But doing this here within, a minute, I was able to move forward. I wasn't stuck because I had an opportunity to have something else spark my brain, consolidating all of that information more than if I had just gone out and done a couple of random Google searches.
Yeah, it's a true exercise in crowdsourcing, but driven at the individual level, right?
Correct. That's exactly right.
I would say just from a talent acquisition perspective, I mean, some of the unintended consequences that we've seen from, the chat GPTs of the world and other, learned language model, applications that are out there is like, yeah, it's great. We can certainly see from a recruiter perspective, for example, the opportunity to have efficiency gains and, whether it's working on job descriptions, working on outreach messages and campaigns and all the things that go into the job function of talent acquisition. But the unintended consequence is that, hey, all candidates now have the same capability to, enhance their resumes. Also, we've seen evidence of candidates being able to work with certain pieces of AI to mass apply to roles, right? So now, the old question being, if everyone has it, no one has it, right? It does impact, talent acquisition to have to think differently about, what tools and what resources do we align to be able to better take on that type of recruiting environment, right? That talent acquisition environment. And so how, recruiters have to be much, much, much more skilled up in terms of their, how they understand technology, how they work with technology, their ability to assess has to be at an even greater level. So, those are some of the, unintended consequences that we're seeing as a result of, that human and AI kind of relationship.
Yeah, and that I think goes to the point is that it's never going to be one or the other. We are going to continue to automate, to drive our learnings, to help create processes that make our lives easier, but it will never be all AI or all us going forward. I just don't think that's a thing, right? We're never going to go back to saying, hey, go ahead and mail me your resume. Go ahead and fax it to me, right? We're not going to go back to that. We're going to continue to use the pieces that are in place. We've got ATSs, we've got CRMs, we've got great technology that helps us do our job better. So we're not going to go backwards, but I do think there has to be that middle, right? Those collaborative relationships, that ability to discern, this feels real, this feels like it was pulled directly from a ChatGPT search, right? Like, recruiters are going to continue to have to develop those relationships. We're going to have to continue to stay connected to our employees, ask good questions, and use it in a way that helps us be better, as opposed to takes us down a dark path.
Yeah, the skills of a recruiter, from an intuition to detective capability, just the technology's not there yet.
Yeah, well, and I think it continues to push us then as well in the TA and the HR space, is to continue to think about, what do we actually need? What is on a resume? How important is a resume? Those conversations, things are changing so quickly that if we only depend on a system to sort for us, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. But if we're only depending on our ability to use our gut, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. So how do you put those pieces together?
Yeah.
And especially if we look at here, these skill trends are changing so quickly. So if we think about hiring for a data scientist in 2010, as opposed to hiring for a data scientist in 2020, like, if we look at the skills that used to be top of mind for everyone, and now what's happening looking even 10 years later, it's a very different way to recruit. We can't just focus on keywords or on what a background looks like. Looking at those changes, you have to be aware of the market. You have to stay connected to people. You have to be having those conversations, but also continuing to research and seeing what's out there. I have an example here of a company that we work with that was looking for folks in the gaming industry, and saying, okay, this is a small space and there's a lot of competition for the talent. And what they were able to do was start looking in a different industry, and ended up actually pulling folks out of the dental industry because of the same skill sets, using 3D mapping. Some of the other technologies were very similar. So pulling people from different industries, or also looking at completely different, a different skill set stack, looking at the work differently, makes a big difference for recruiters to be able to fill those gaps, but also be able to bring the data to show why this person is a good fit, instead of just saying, just trust me, you want to talk to them. Thoughts on this one, Matt?
Yeah, I just think that, again, as we think about the types of opportunities that exist across organizations, this slide really does show you just, what's changed, right? In terms of, whether it's technology or just the role itself, right? All of these things evolve. And I think what that does is it really challenges hiring managers to understand, what's most relevant today in that role versus what it was, maybe even when they began their career around that space, and, how to get there.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has to think a little bit more broadly about, where the right person might come from. So the example you talk about, moving from, an industry that, has similar technology, landscape, but completely different focus. Well, if there's a shortage or a very tight labor pool around that skill set, the onus then becomes the company to understand, well, how can I leverage that skill set, even if it's from outside my vertical of industry? And
100%.
So that's, we see this a lot, and we talk through, because not every company or industry is aware of another industry that is also using the same types of technology, maybe just a little bit differently. And there might be a very small learning curve to overcome in order to really make use of talented folks from outside the core industry that you belong to.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. So thinking about different industries, and also thinking about different roles, what are those skills overlap? You can see here we're looking at what we used to look at for a systems analyst, and now we're calling it a cloud engineer. Where are those skill sets that overlap? maybe if you're looking in the future, you know you're going to need more cloud engineers. Maybe you're not quite there yet. You are still functioning more on that systems analyst space. But what could you look at in terms of a background to say, hey, we're going to get someone there, whether it's an internal person saying, hey, here are the areas where your skills really connect with that future role. Here are the areas we want to get you upskilled on over the next 6 to 12 months to make sure that you're ready to move into that space, to make sure that we as an organization are ready to move in. Or if you're hiring somebody externally, thinking about hiring for the cloud engineer role, but not at 100%, because that's sometimes not even an option, right? Sometimes the technology hasn't been out long enough for anyone to have a significant length of experience in it. But if you hire somebody who's got that 70 to 80% of what you need, and then you can continue to enhance and train and help them learn, they're getting something out of moving into that role, and you are as well. So trying to find the perfect fit sometimes actually trips us up, as opposed to saying, hey, what are those transferable skills that come over from that role? And then what do we need to do to enhance this person's career, help them develop into the areas that we need, but that they also want to move into?
Yeah, totally agree.
And then here's another example just to show you. If we were to look at someone sourcing a marketing role, and these are some of the things that are important in this marketing role. Excuse me, I've got a tickle. Okay. So we're looking at this communications role. What you can do too is if you're thinking about, okay, so we've got oh wait, my slide's not advancing. There we go. So we've got a marketing role that we're looking to hire for. Somebody's got a community management background and has some of these cool things. These two things are a little bit different, but what kind of things align? What are the things that make these two roles interesting, and bringing somebody with maybe a different background into that marketing space that might actually make you more broad, might allow you to move into other areas that you didn't have a background in the past. And AI can connect these dots so much faster than we can. So if you were to able to say, hey, I'm open on a couple of these different pieces, AI says, hey, we're going to infer that this community management role might actually work really well for a communications position in marketing. What are those skills that connect, and how do we start looking at the profiles differently, not just on keywords or titles or backgrounds, but looking at what are those things that come together that might actually make this communications role a little bit of a different flavor, which is a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would tell you that the skill mapping exercise that AI can help with today is almost invaluable, because it just broadens, the actual scope of people that might qualify and really enhance certain, roles that you have on your desk today to hire for. Because especially when you talk about that diversity of thought, when you bring people from, outside what the tunnel vision might look at in terms of candidates, you really enhance what somebody can, how the role can be performed, but also what they bring to the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to wrap this little section here about talent intelligence. Matt and I have 4 ideas to keep us moving forward when we think about TI, which is such a weird thing to say, TI instead of TA, right, or TM or HR. But here are some things that we want you to think about. So the first thing is developing those skills and outcome-based talent strategies, looking at what are we solving for as an organization, not just hiring a position, filling a job, but looking at those broader outcome-based strategies. What are we trying to solve for? What's the organization trying to do? How do we get there in a way that maybe looks differently, but aligns to the business goals they're really going to help you keep your organization moving forward? Looking at DEI, and so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Looking at that in all parts of your organization. It doesn't just belong once you hire, it doesn't just live once you hire somebody. How do you put that into your strategies to attract folks? How do you put that into your hiring processes? How do you continue to focus on inclusion and belonging and diversity of thoughts, backgrounds, profiles, lifestyles, all of those pieces? Embedding that in your organization tells a story to not only the candidates that you're looking to attract, but all the way through your organization's policies, processes. When it's embedded as opposed to being a project, your organization looks completely different. So we're going to encourage you to do that as well. Create talent pools and connection plans. Matt, I want to flip this one over to you. Talk to us a little bit about why having regular connections and talent pools makes a difference in you being able to find the right talent at the right time.
Yeah, I think always consistently kind of keeping, especially if you have a pretty large and robust existing candidate base, right? So for the amount of time your company has put into going out and sourcing individual candidates, I think it's really critical to always have a system in place that is consistently kind of either checking in with those individuals, because there's always a constant open need within your organization, and to see where people kind of fit in. So just having an approach that makes use of and leverages all that hard work that was performed to attract talent. And people aren't static, they change over time. So it's important to understand, where they are today in their, personal journey, because, as we said before, someone may not be a fit one day, but in 6, 9, 12, 18 months, they might be, the right fit for where your organization is today. Again, I think that from a talent acquisition perspective, always creating and maintaining those talent pools is always going to help support any type of hiring strategy that you have going forward. I think that's, instead of having to go out to market fresh every single time,
right,
having a good place to start is super important.
Yeah, and so then talk to us on the next one too. Why AI, machine learning, automation? Why do we want to focus on this? I think we've already covered quite a bit. But.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a lot, but I really see a lot of value, and we talk to customers about this, that having a strategy that employs using, some sort of automated artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation that allows recruiters not only to be able to go out to market, right, and, surface the best people, but also to again, create engagement that can reach at a mass level. So it doesn't, you're not going one by one, but you are effectively creating, candidate engagement or prospect engagement on an automated level that can communicate things that are exciting about your company, opportunities that are out there, and things that are specific to the individual talent pools that we talked about, that can bring more people to you than necessarily having to go out and getting.
Absolutely. All right, so we are coming to the tail end of our presentation. We've got just a couple more thoughts. We're going to look ahead, and Matt and I are going to look into our crystal ball and give you some of our ideas of what we think 2024 is going to bring. But before we do that, we want to know what you think. So looking ahead, what do you think will be the most impactful recruiting trends next year? And we have not given you all of the choices, but we've put a couple things out there. So we would love to hear from you. Our last poll of this webinar here. What do you think is going to be the most impactful recruiting trend? Is it AI-driven recruitment technologies, remote work strategies, diversity and inclusion initiatives, skill-based hiring approaches, or innovative candidate experiences? What do y'all think? All right, Matt. Okay, do your work again. What's the right answer? Where do you think folks are going to land?
Yeah, I think most organizations are all exploring, right, AI-driven requirement technologies. And as I said before, I think there is a lot of very interesting application out there. And just like we just saw in the past year, where many companies were, going through, an organizational fitness exercise, right? Do we have the right people? Do we have enough of the right people? That attention is now turned towards, hey, what pieces of technology, not even just within HR and talent acquisition, but across organization, to say that we are supported internally and then from a customer perspective externally. So I think you're going to find that AI-driven recruitment technology is going to probably be one of the most impactful recruiting trends next year, followed up, I think, by skills-based hiring approaches, just based on how how organizations are looking to evaluate talent.
Okay, and those are the top two. Matt, you are a whiz. I love it. Okay. So we're going to flip to our 4 thoughts for 2024. Here are predictions. We'll come back this time next year maybe and see if we were correct. So the first one that we think is going to happen in 2024, organizations are going to hire or rehire more deliberately. I think we are going to stop seeing the crazy trends and the roller coasters. I think orgs are going to be more focused on looking at what do we need to bring to the future? What kind of skills do we need? I think there's going to be a more deliberate approach from companies as opposed to the continued seesaw. Hopefully it's going to also tie back to looking at your internal folks and where can you deploy them? How can you look at your external hiring to be more focused and really bring the long-term effects to your org? I think that's where we're going to land from an external hiring perspective. And Matt, talk to us a little bit about this one. So talent attraction will slowly start to focus more on skills. You think we're going to be there by the end of 2024?
Yeah, I tend to believe that talent acquisition groups are going to leverage multiple systems to evaluate talent, and really looking at right off the back of deliberate hiring, right? That the evaluation process for candidates will probably extend a little bit because companies are in a position to be a bit more diligent and thorough in that evaluation process. Again, depending on the nature of the customer or the industry and what areas of business they're going to support. But I think the way in which talent attraction is changing is driven primarily through technology and through focus, right?
Yep.
And because of skills, I mean, it's definitely headed in that direction.
Yeah. And I think flowing into that one, hybrid work arrangements are going to affect talent attraction. I think they're going to continue to cause friction. I don't know that there's a lot more to say about that. We're going to see what happens with hybrid work arrangements coming in the next year. Would love to hear y'all as you work through that over the next year as well. And then our last one here, talking about career development shifting to individualized AI or machine-driven learning plans. I can see a lot of organizations working to customize or individualize career paths or plans based on what an employee wants to look at, as opposed to a top-down driven strategy of saying, here's your person, this person's going to go in this spot, this spot, this spot. So in my estimation, I think we are going to be seeing more of an employee-driven career pathing process as opposed to just a top-down 9-box. Matt, I'll let you weigh in on this, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll quickly just say I think this is a huge opportunity for companies from an enablement perspective. I think that there are going to be platforms of technology that do a great job at understanding what the current skills-based environment looks like from an employee population perspective, and then being able to turn that around and into that career pathing strategy that's driven by technology. And I think that is going to add a lot of good return at the employee level as well as for the company. I think both are going to benefit greatly from well implemented strategies around that.
I love that. All right, we have reached the end of our webinar. I am going to shoot this back to Amber-Lee to wrap us up.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. You may disconnect and have a lovely rest of your day.